I woke up to a fraud alert, not to my husband's voice asking how I was doing, not to flowers on the bedside table, not even to a single text message. I woke up from emergency surgery with a dry mouth and a hospital bracelet cutting into my wrist, and the very first thing I saw on my phone was a notification from my credit card company telling me that $8,400 had just been charged at the Bellagio Hotel in Las Vegas. What matters is that 41 hours earlier, I had delivered my son by emergency C-section at 34 weeks. What matters is that my husband Ryan had kissed my forehead in the operating room hallway and told me he loved me. What matters is that I had no idea, not even a flicker of suspicion, that the moment the anesthesia pulled me under, he was already calling an Uber to the airport. I stared at the notification until the words blurred. Bellagio Hotel, Las Vegas, Nevada, $8,400. I thought it had to be a mistake. Someone had cloned my card. That was the only explanation that made sense, because my husband was supposed to be here. He had promised. I called him before I even pressed the call button for the nurse. He picked up on the third ring. There was noise in the background, something upbeat, music, maybe, or the particular kind of crowd noise you only hear in a casino. "Hey," he said. His voice was easy, relaxed, like a man with no worries at all. "Ryan," my voice cracked on the single syllable. "There's a fraud alert on my card, $8,000. The Bellagio." A pause, just a breath too long. "I'm in a meeting," he said. "I'll call you back." "Ryan, I just had surgery. I just had our son." I know. You're in good hands. Let me finish up and I'll call you back in a bit." He hung up before I could say another word. I sat there in that hospital bed with monitors beeping and an IV in my arm and a son in the NICU down the hall, who weighed 4 pounds and 6 ounces, and I looked at my phone like it had personally betrayed me. Then I opened my banking app. The Bellagio charge was only the beginning. Below it was a dinner charge at a steakhouse inside the hotel, $1,100, then a spa reservation at the Wynn, $1,400, then another hotel charge, a different room, an upgrade, another name on the reservation, then alcohol purchases, pool cabana fees, show tickets, charge after charge, each one time-stamped. I could trace exactly where they were and what they were doing, hour by hour. The first charge had gone through at 4:52 in the afternoon. My surgery had started at 4:20. I wasn't even out of the operating room yet. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the phone. My hands were still shaky from the anesthesia, and the incision across my abdomen had started to throb in a way the medication wasn't fully covering. I sat very still, and I opened Instagram instead. My sister-in-law, Bethany, had posted a reel 3 hours ago. The caption said "desert vibes only" with a little cactus emoji. She was standing at the edge of the Bellagio fountain in a yellow sundress, holding a cocktail, grinning like she'd just won something. Behind her I could see Ryan. He had his arm around his cousin. He was laughing. His sunglasses sat pushed up on his forehead. He looked like a man having the best weekend of his life. He was wearing the same shirt he'd had on when he kissed me goodbye in the hospital hallway. I kept scrolling. His mother, Eloise, had posted a photo of a room service spread, champagne, strawberries, charcuterie board the size of a coffee table. She'd tagged the hotel. She'd used the hashtag treat yourself. There were 8 people in the group: Ryan's sister, his 2 cousins, his mother, an aunt I'd met once at a Christmas party, and Ryan himself smiling in every single picture. I pressed the nurse call button. When she came in, I asked her for a glass of water and whether she could find out how my son was doing in the NICU. I don't know why that was what I said. I think my brain was protecting me by giving me something small and manageable to focus on, while the larger things settled somewhere deeper. Her name was Christine. She had kind eyes and she was the first person to ask me, that entire day, whether I was okay. I told her I was fine. I wasn't fine. I called Ryan again. He didn't answer. I called Bethany. She answered on the second ring with the sound of slot machines in the background. "Hey, how are you feeling?" She said it like everything was normal. "Bethany," I kept my voice flat, "I can see your Instagram, you're in Las Vegas." Silence. "And there are $23,000 in charges on my credit card." "Oh," a small breath. "Ryan said you would understand. He said you guys talked about it." "We did not talk about it." He said, "Bethany, I had emergency surgery yesterday. My son is in the NICU. Your brother told me he was staying here." Another silence, and then, carefully, "Look, the trip was already planned. We'd put deposits down months ago. It wasn't like anyone could get a refund at this point. Ryan said you were stable, and the doctor said everything went fine." "Stable," I repeated. I mean, you were okay. You are okay. I'm in a hospital bed. I know that, but the deposits. Bethany. Were non-refundable, and Ryan said. I hung up. I called his mother next. Eloise answered immediately and launched into a cheerful hello before I could speak. I could hear her smiling through the phone. I saw the charges on my card, I said. The cheerfulness didn't disappear exactly. It just rearranged itself into something more careful. Sweetheart, these things happen. Life keeps moving. Ryan said you were resting comfortably and the baby is being monitored. There's nothing we could have done sitting in a waiting room anyway. You could have been here. We would have just been in the way. I was alone, I said. I woke up from surgery and I was alone. She made a sound I can only describe as sympathetic but unmoved. You had the nurses. You had the doctors. The best thing for everyone right now is for you to rest and not stress yourself out. My credit card has $23,000 in new charges. Ryan handles the finances. Talk to Ryan. She said it the way someone says not my department. And then she asked if the baby was eating yet, and I told her goodbye and ended the call. I reached 3 more people from that trip over the next hour. A cousin who laughed nervously and said he'd assumed Ryan had cleared everything. An aunt who told me Las Vegas in April was gorgeous and I should come next time. And Ryan one final time, who let it ring through to voicemail. Not one of them asked how much pain I was in. Not one of them asked what the baby's name was going to be, or how he was doing in the NICU, or whether I needed anything. They talked about the buffet at the Wynn and a comedy show they'd seen the night before. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, I realized that not a single person on that trip believed they had done anything wrong. That was the part that hurt most. Not the money, not even the abandonment. It was the absolute certainty in their voices that this had all been perfectly reasonable. I put my phone face down on the tray table. Christine came back an hour later to check my blood pressure. She sat with me a few minutes longer than she needed to, asking gentle questions about my son, letting me talk, handing me a small cup of apple juice without being asked. I told her I hadn't had any visitors yet. She didn't say anything, but she came back on her next round with a warm blanket and laid it across my legs without being asked, either. The kindness of strangers when the people who are supposed to love you have chosen not to be there, is a specific kind of grief. I didn't have a word for it then, I do now. My best friend Carmen arrived at 7 that evening. She had driven 2 hours, texted me from the parking garage, and walked in carrying a bag from the Thai place I'd been craving since my second trimester, and a travel-sized dry shampoo because, she said, she knew I'd want to feel human. She sat in the chair beside my bed, and let me tell her everything, all of it, every charge, every phone call, every cheerful voice with a casino in the background. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Give me your phone." I gave it to her. She opened my banking app, went to the card settings and locked the card. 30 seconds, done. Okay, she said, handing it back. What else do we need to do? Something inside me that had been knotted up since I first woke that morning loosened a little. Not because everything was fine, but because I wasn't alone anymore. We called the fraud department from my hospital bed that night. I explained the situation from the beginning. The representative asked if I had been able to authorize any purchases between 4:52 p.m. Thursday and the current moment. I told her I had been in surgery, then recovery, then a hospital room, and that I could provide medical records to confirm the timeline. She escalated the case immediately, assigned it a reference number, and told me not to contact any of the parties involved while the investigation was open. Ryan didn't come home for 4 more days. When he walked into my hospital room, I had already been moved to a regular recovery floor. I was sitting up in bed, reading. My son was doing better. He had graduated to a different kind of feeding. I had finally slept more than 3 hours in a row. Ryan was tan. He had the specific kind of glow that comes from 4 days in Nevada sun. He was carrying a paper gift bag, and he smiled when he walked in, the kind of smile someone gives when they're hoping the mood has improved since they last checked. "Hey," he said. "How are you feeling?" I looked at him without answering. He set the bag on the tray table. Inside was a snow globe, a Las Vegas snow globe with a tiny plastic replica of the strip, and fake gold glitter instead of snow. It probably cost $12 at an airport gift shop. "Thought of you," he said. I picked it up, turned it over once, set it back down. "You thought of me," I said quietly. "Of course." He sat in the chair Carmen had sat in 4 nights ago, Look, I know you're upset, but you were stable. The doctor said everything went fine. There was nothing I could have done sitting in a waiting room for 4 days. You could have been here when I woke up. Babe. You could have been here the second night, when his oxygen levels dropped, and they had to adjust his breathing support. You could have been here the first time I tried to hold him, and I needed someone to help me stand up, because the incision. My voice caught. I stopped, breathed. You could have been here. He looked down at his hands. I hear you. No, I said, you don't. He tried for 20 more minutes. He talked about the deposits. He talked about how it wasn't a party, it was family time, planned well in advance. He talked about how hard it had been for him to be away, too. He didn't say sorry, not once, not even the shape of the word. Before he left, he moved the snow globe back into my line of sight, like a peace offering, like glitter and plastic could close a $23,000 wound. I waited until he was gone, then I opened my laptop. I had started keeping notes in a plain document the night Carmen helped me lock the card. Every charge, every timestamp, every phone call, every name. I had screenshots of Bethany's Instagram reel, screenshots of Eloise's room service post, still live, still tagged to the hotel. I had the complete banking statement sorted by date and time with the surgical timeline highlighted. I had my call log showing every attempt to reach Ryan while he was in Nevada, and the exact times those calls were ignored. Then I went further back. I pulled 4 years of joint statements. What I found made me sit very still for a long time. The Las Vegas trip wasn't the first time. Charges went back almost 2 years, some small enough that I'd barely registered them, others not. A weekend I'd been told was a work conference. A car repair charge that matched the name of a resort in Scottsdale. Pattern after pattern that I had explained away because I had trusted him. I saved everything in 3 separate folders and emailed copies to myself and to Carmen. The next morning, I requested my complete medical records from the hospital's patient services office. A discharge coordinator helped me understand exactly what had been documented. The time surgery began, when I was brought into recovery, when I was first able to take calls. Every nursing note was time-stamped. Every page confirmed the same thing. I had been under anesthesia or recovering from it during every single charge on that first day. I had not approved a single one. I met with a family law attorney the following week. She was sharp and unhurried, and she spent 40 minutes reading through my documentation before she looked up. This is well organized, she said. I had time in the hospital. She told me to keep collecting. She told me not to change my behavior at home and not to confront Ryan about any of it directly. Ryan came home acting like things were returning to normal. He made dinner a couple of nights. He asked about the baby's progress with what seemed like genuine interest. He mentioned casually that the bank had reached out about some questions regarding the Las Vegas charges, and he'd explained the situation and expected it to be cleared up soon. I said, okay. I smiled. I did not tell him I had already spoken to the fraud investigator twice. I did not tell him I had provided 2 years of transaction records that told a story he hadn't planned on anyone reading. And I did not tell him about the secondary account, the one I'd quietly opened 2 months before my due date because something in me, some quiet instinct I hadn't named yet, had wanted a safety net. I had moved my direct deposit there the week I came home from the hospital. He didn't know. He would find out, but not the way he was expecting. There was one more piece of evidence I hadn't anticipated. When the fraud investigators asked whether we had any security cameras at home, I told them we had one at the front door. They asked for the footage from the day of my surgery. When the clip loaded, I had to watch it twice before I understood what I was looking at. The video showed the paramedics helping me out the front door on a stretcher, Ryan walking behind us carrying my overnight bag. Then the ambulance doors closed and the vehicle pulled away. Ryan stood on the front step and watched it go. He stayed there for a moment. Then he walked back inside. 16 minutes later, he came back out through the front door. He was wearing a different jacket. He was pulling a carry-on suitcase. He had gone back inside after the ambulance left, packed a bag, and left for the airport. The investigator paused the clip and looked at me across the table. This is significant, she said. I already knew that. What I hadn't known until that moment was that it had been recorded. The bank's determination arrived 6 weeks after I'd filed. Every disputed charge had been reviewed against my medical documentation. The charges made during my surgery and recovery were ruled unauthorized. They would be refunding the full disputed amount. She gave me a figure, $21,240. The attorney filed for divorce the same week. Ryan found out on a Tuesday morning when a process server knocked on our front door at 9 a.m. while he was still in his bathrobe. I wasn't home, I was at the NICU, holding my son. The calls came in fast, Ryan first, then Bethany, then Eloise, then two of the cousins from the trip. Ryan's voicemail was a sound I'd never heard from him. Not exactly anger, but something stunned and hollow, like a person who has just realized the story they'd been telling themselves doesn't match the one everyone else has been reading. I didn't return a single call. I played the voicemails for my attorney instead. When the divorce proceedings began, Ryan's attorney argued that as a married couple with shared finances, there was no clear wrongdoing. My attorney put the medical records on the table. She put the bank's fraud determination on the table. She put the timeline on the table, every charge, every surgical note, every minute of that Thursday afternoon accounted for. And then she put the security footage on the table, the jacket, the carry-on suitcase, the timestamp. The judge reviewed the full record without speaking for what felt like a very long time. When she finally did speak, she said the pattern of financial conduct documented in the case represented a deliberate and sustained misuse of marital assets. She said the circumstances under which those specific charges were made, during and immediately following an emergency surgical procedure, removed any possibility of implied consent. She said what Ryan had described to his family as a scheduling inconvenience was, in the record before her, something significantly more serious than that. I had been waiting months to hear someone in an official capacity say exactly what had happened. Not the version Ryan told his family, not the version he told himself. The actual version. I didn't cry in the courtroom. I'd done most of that crying alone, in a hospital room 5 months earlier, watching families visit other patients while my door stayed quiet. The final settlement gave me the house, primary custody of our son, and full restitution for the fraudulent charges already returned by the bank. Ryan's financial penalties from the proceedings, combined with the bank's fraud findings, meant he was walking out of our marriage, carrying consequences he hadn't budgeted for. Bethany and Eloise were not named in the settlement, but the hotel had opened an internal inquiry into the booking, and several members of the Vegas group had received certified letters requesting documentation of who had authorized various charges during the stay. I didn't follow up on what came of those letters. That chapter was no longer mine to read. I moved some things around in the house after it was over, painted the guest room a color I'd always liked, but Ryan had vetoed. Bought a rocking chair for the nursery that I'd been looking at for 2 years, set up the baby monitor on the nightstand, on the side of the bed that was just mine now. My son came home from the NICU on a Thursday morning in early June, 10 weeks after he was born. Carmen drove us. She helped me carry him inside and held him while I made a bottle, and she told me he had my eyes. He did. I checked. I think about that fraud alert a lot. The notification that lit up my phone before I'd even had a glass of water after surgery. At the time it felt like the worst possible way to wake up from one of the hardest things my body had ever done. Now I understand it differently. It was the moment the truth stopped hiding. All the things I had half noticed and half explained away over 4 years. The trips that didn't add up, the accounts that didn't balance, the version of our marriage Ryan performed for other people versus the one I lived inside. All of it became visible at once. In $23,000 worth of charges made while I was unconscious. I couldn't unsee it after that, and I didn't want to. Losing what I thought I had was the hardest thing I have ever done. Building what I actually want has been the most honest. My son doesn't know any of this yet. Someday, if he asks, I'll tell him that the people who love you show up when it costs them something. That love isn't what someone says when everything is easy. It's what they do when staying is hard. And I'll tell him that his mother learned that lesson in a hospital bed, holding a plastic snow globe bought with her own credit card, and that the woman who set it down and opened her laptop instead was the bravest version of herself she had ever been.